So how's it going?
It's going pretty well.
It's good, great.
Okay, I'd like to start in the beginning for a minute. Do you recall the first time that you met each other?
That we met each other?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I remember the first time we ever met. For a while I worked with a guy from Texas. We worked at a music store, and he had moved here. He didn't move here to Amsterdam, but he moved to Columbus, Ohio, where we're from Texas, for a girl, and he wanted to play music, and he gave me a demo of the CD of this band that he was playing with, and asked me to come to a show, and he was playing with this guy, and I remember I didn't normally listen. I don't normally throw in a CD that somebody gives to me, but I listened to it and I thought it was really good, and I went to the show, and I remember thinking that I liked everything about it except for one thing, which is that I wasn't playing with him. And we met afterwards. I just introduced myself and told Tyler that it was a great show, and I enjoyed it. And I think it was just a couple days later that we started hanging out and just became really good friends. And then it was like a year after that we started playing music together.
Do you know why you took a chance? Because you say normally you don't play the music. Do you know why you did it?
I don't know why I took the chance on it. I don't know what it was, but because it literally was just, there was nothing special about it. It was just a burnt CD inside of one of those little envelope CD disc, whatever it is, and it was written on the. I think there was 3 songs on it, and they were written with a Sharpie on there. And I remember going home and putting it in my computer and playing the songs, and I don't know what it was, but I was just there's something really different about this and something really cool about it. And there were songs that he wrote in his basement, years ago. It was cool. I think about that a lot, actually. It's kind of interesting to look back at the beginning of things and before anything ever happened.
Well, you said it wasn't until a year later that you actually started playing together, but in between, I assume there was talk about music constantly.
Yeah, well, we talked during that year that we didn't play music together. We just we built our friendship, and I think from the very beginning we wanted to play music together, but we really didn't want to talk about that too much, because at the time we were both kind of doing things that, it didn't make sense for us to play music together. And so we talked about it, but not all the time, because I think that there's kind of this thought that it might not ever happen. You don't know. And so we don't want to revolve our entire relationship around the idea of a possibility that might not ever happen.
Because then when it doesn't happen, it might ruin the friendship.
Maybe, or it gets to a point where that's all you ever talk about, and if it doesn't happen, then it's a huge, it's a letdown or whatever.
But then when you do start playing, the main focus was initially on Columbus and in a larger extent Ohio. Why this decision to focus on your home state mostly at first?
Well, starting out, we didn't really, as any band starting out, we didn't have a lot of money in our bank account, and in order to travel, I think you need, first of all, a vehicle to travel, which costs money, and then you also need hotel rooms and gas to pay to travel, and in order to pay for those things, you need people to come to the show so that you can get money. So in our minds, it just it didn't make sense to spend money on those things that we weren't going to be getting money back, because nobody knew who we were. It's just an interesting concept of starting a band, and how do you do that, and nobody knows who you are. And I still don't know how people know who we are sometimes, going overseas and everything. But we decided just to work our full-time jobs throughout the week, and then on the weekends we would play in places where we could easily drive to, and try and build a fan base there. and that's what we did for a year. I think like a year before finally getting people to come out to a show.
But was there at this time a temptation to go outside of the States, or was it mainly just your own decision to focus on your home state?
Well, I think I don't know if I'd say a temptation to travel further away, but there's a desire to. I remember we talk about all the time, just kind of having the conversation of, someday we're going to travel further away than 2 hours from our house and play more than 3 shows in a row, because that's all we were doing for a long time is trying to very strategically build a fan base in Ohio by just playing in front of new people, whether that's being put on a show that there's multiple bands, and so that kind of has a built-in crowd, or maybe even trying to open up for somebody or whatever it is, just getting in front of people that hadn't heard us before. And then the goal is to kind of get those kids to go and tell their friends, and that's kind of how it just organically kind of built in Ohio, and we were able to kind of get people to be excited about it.
Had this way of approaching the band, had this an influence on the way you relate to the fans?
What?
The way, like you say, cultivating an audience within your home city and then home state, has this made the connection or affected the connection you have with the fans in any way? And now to a larger extent over the world, I suppose?
I think that starting out from the most local of a level as you can get is definitely, it challenges you to be creative in your live show. And for a while, I think there were shows that we played where it was people in the room, it was hard to find somebody who wasn't our friend or our family, at least in our hometown. I remember playing those kind of shows, and so we always wanted to try and impress them, and try and get our friends to think that we're cool, or our family to think that we're doing something that's maybe bigger than it is, and then reaching further than that. I think going and playing in front of people who have never seen us before, it's a real challenge to try and get people to sometimes even to look at us when there's such a culture of ADD, or people who have seen the same thing over and over from different bands and different shows and performances, and to try and break out of that and try and do something that's a little bit different, or challenge each other to be a little bit more energetic, or challenge ourselves to come up with a new idea that can capture people's attention and get people excited about it, and finding this idea of really incorporating a group of people rather than just have people come and look at us on stage, because that gets old, and it's not as fun when it's 2 of us rather than a group of us, no matter how many it is.